Daniel Sports Central. We go over our 2022 college football predictions for the Arizona State Sun Devils, team that went 8-5 overall in the 2021 season. Overall, good season for the Sun Devils. But how this team be in 2022? That's what we'll be going over here today. We'll be analyzing this team and predicting our schedule game by game in this video, starting out with your team trends. Arizona State 8-5 last season. I mean, once again, overall a good season for the Sun Devils. They were 5-1 in their first 6 games, and then 3-4 in their last 7. And this team, they had several really good wins last season. They did take a couple of close, tough losses, but otherwise, this team was pretty competitive last season. One of the better teams in the Pac-12, and definitely one of the quieter teams too. This team really wasn't recognized very much. Of course, I mean, they were a bit overshadowed by Oregon and Utah, the two main teams of the conference. But Arizona State, this team did have talent last season, and they were overall a pretty good team. They did lose to BYU by 10. That was a tough loss, 17-27. Cougars were good last season. They beat UCLA, though, a couple of weeks later, 42-23. Went to UCLA, which, by the way, the Bruins were a good team last season, and Arizona State went in there and won that game by nearly 20 points. Beat USC 31-16. Beat Washington on the road 35-30, and also beat Arizona in the last game of the regular season 38-15. Played Wisconsin in their bowl game. That was in the Las Vegas Bowl. Took a loss there by a touchdown. The Badgers ended up winning it in the end, but it was a close matchup, defensive matchup, and in the end, this team finished out the season at 8-5. Roster preview going into next season. This team has got some significant changes, though, going into 2022, and that can be for the better sometimes or for the worse in some circumstances. In Arizona State, this is a team that, I mean, there are a lot of players transferring away from Arizona State this offseason. You got Jaden Daniels transferring out, the quarterback, which is that was kind of confusing, seeing Jaden Daniels decide to jump ship, and he is off to a different team. And I mean, Jaden Daniels, overall he played really well in 2019. If you remember that season, his touchdown interception ratio in 2019 when he was a full-time starter was 17-2, which is actually very impressive. Only threw 2 picks in his true freshman season. 2020, I mean, he only played 4 games because of the Pac-12, hardly even had a season in 2020. So you can't really count that. But looking at 2021, 2,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, 10 picks, and a 65% completion rate. So his completion rate was significantly better in 2021 versus 2019, but obviously threw a lot more interceptions versus how he did in his true freshman season. But Jaden Daniels, nonetheless, he is gone. So, I mean, that is certainly, I feel like, detrimental to the Sun Devils. I feel like Jaden Daniels really still shows potential, but in the end, the Sun Devils have to go with someone different at quarterback. You got Paul Tyson coming in from Alabama and Emory Jones coming in from Florida. Emory Jones was the primary starter for Florida this past season, and he played decent. I mean, he was very inconsistent with Florida, so we'll see how that translates to the Pac-12. I mean, obviously, the SEC is a much more brutal conference, we can all agree, than the Pac-12. And, of course, Paul Tyson played for Alabama. Really didn't play too much. We haven't seen too much out of Paul Tyson, but I'm assuming Emory Jones is going to win the starting position just because he's got some experience in college football, but Paul Tyson certainly has got some potential as well. So the quarterback situation is very intriguing for the Sun Devils. The running back situation certainly is a question mark. You lose Rachaad White, put up over 1,400 yards, 16 touchdowns last season, and you also lose your second running back, Diamante Trayanum, who's transferring out. He put up 420 yards and 6 touchdowns. So, and a lot of things have happened in the past couple months. I did a schedule preview on this team, and we'll get into the results here in the schedule in just a little bit. But certainly, I mean, there have been more players transferring out of Arizona State in the past couple of months. I mean, it's still going on. So this team certainly, there's a lot of players leaving, and this team is continuing to look more and more inexperienced going into next season. But you do have your third running back coming back in Daniel Ngata, who put up over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns last season. So he's going to be likely the leader of the backfield going to next season. I mean, you're going to lose Rachaad White no matter what. It was Diamante Trayanum. I mean, you really could use him going into next season. You also got to consider, too, Jaden Daniels. He was the second in rushing for this team last season. He put up 700 yards of rushing and 6 touchdowns. He wasn't only a passer. He was also he was a dual-threat quarterback. So certainly, Jaden Daniels leaving is going to have an impact on the rushing game as well. So you lose your top 3 rushers from last season. The receiving core, Ricky Pearsall is transferring out. You also lose your second receiver, LV Bunkley Shelton. He's transferring out. I mean, this is concerning what we're seeing here with Arizona State, with all the players jumping ship like this. And that's kind of the consequence of the transfer portal. You get one or two key players to leave. You got a whole bunch of other players that might want to leave and go to different locations. And that's what we're seeing out of Arizona State right now. I mean, this team is a victim of the transfer portal this offseason because of, the amount of players, the amount of key players that are leaving one after another. It's just a domino effect. And you do lose your tight end, of course, Curtis Hodges. He was third in receiving for this team last season. If you look at Ricky Pearsall, put up over 600 yards, Bunkley Shelton over 400 yards, Curtis Hodges nearly 400 yards last season. So, the receiving core is really young. The running back situation is certainly a question mark. And offensively, you lose also 3 on the offensive line. And defensively, not much better. You lose 3 on the defensive line, 1 linebacker, and 4 in the secondary. So, I think you see where this is going. Arizona State, this is a team that I've really liked, actually, in the past few years in my predictions. And I've been very optimistic about Arizona State. And for the most part, it's actually paid off. But going into the next season, this is a team where I'm starting to question the coaching a bit. Herm Edwards, of course, the coach of this team, and he's a good football coach from what we've seen and what we've thought. But it just, it's certainly concerning what we're seeing here. With Arizona State and the amount of players that are transferring out here. So, we'll see how this team ages and how much experience we do. We don't have much. There's not much experience on this team going to next season. It's a very young roster, so we'll see how this team is able to deal with the significant changes. But brings up the question: how high is the ceiling for this team? We'll get into that more in a second, but I certainly think the ceiling is not very high for this team going to next season, considering how young this team is, and there's a lot of question marks as well. But transfer portal and recruiting, getting into some more of the players that are transferring out. Of course, Jaden Daniels, Paul Tyson mentioned them. You do bring in Nesta Jade Silvera, defensive lineman from Miami. He actually will be definitely an impact player, so at least you bring him in. Valadez, running back, is coming in from Wyoming. Tommy Hill, defensive back, is taken off to Nebraska, so you lose him in the secondary. Diamante Tram, once again, he is off, and he is headed to Ohio State, turns out. Des Holmes is coming in from Penn State, defensive lineman, and Chris Martinez, defensive tackle, is coming in from San Diego State. And you also got Emory Jones. Once again, he's coming in from Florida, and you lose a whole bunch of players here. Eric Gentry is off to USC. Linebacker, Pearsall, once again, we mentioned him. Receiver, he's off to Florida. LaBelle, offensive tackle, is off to Cal. Ezra Dotson, offensive lineman, is off to TCU. LV Bunkley Shelton is going to Oklahoma. Lowell, defensive lineman, is off to Louisville. And Rodney Gross Jr., linebacker, is in the transfer portal. And recruiting-wise, doesn't look too good. 103rd in the nation, 12th in the Pac-12, so you're dead last in the Pac-12, and you're outside the top 100 in the nation. You got 1 4-star coming in and 8 3-stars. Really, the only, I'm going to be brutally honest here. The only benefit that you get from the transfer portal is Nesta Jade Silvera coming in from Miami. He's going to be like the one key player coming in from recruiting and transfer portal looks right now. The quarterback situation, bring in Paul Tyson, bring in Emory Jones, but obviously both quarterbacks certainly have got a low ceiling. So that said, I've been very honest to this point, but let's look at your schedule now going into next season. You got Northern Arizona on September 1st. That is going to be your week 1 matchup. So that's an FCS opponent. You should take care of them. But then you got Oklahoma State. That's going to be a tough matchup there on the road. Eastern Michigan at home on the 17th. And then you got Utah coming to town on the 24th. You got USC on the road on October 1st, and then Washington on the 8th. You got 2 road trips then after that, after your bye, Stanford and Colorado. You got UCLA coming to town on the 5th, Washington State on the road, Oregon State at home, and then Arizona on the road to finish out your season. Looking at September here, Northern Arizona, I do think you'll beat them by a couple of touchdowns there. Northern Arizona is, you should take care of them. If you don't, I would be concerned. I do have you winning that game by a couple of touchdowns. Oklahoma State, I do want to favor the Cowboys pretty comfortably there. I feel like Oklahoma State, with them being at home, plus the Cowboys, I do think, that's a team that I could definitely see being a college football playoff contender next season, so I'll favor them there. Eastern Michigan, close one, but I will favor Arizona State. I do think that's a closer matchup, but in the end, ASU gets the win. And then Utah, the Utes next season are a team that I actually could see definitely making another college football playoffs. So I'll favor them there. So you're 2-2 heading to October. USC on the road. I'll favor the Trojans there. I do think USC next season is going to be a pretty good team. Of course, Caleb Williams, Travis Dye, a lot of good transfers going in, Lincoln Riley as well. I think USC is going to be an 8 to 10 win team probably next season, so they're going to be a good team. Washington, you will beat the Huskies. That certainly would be an excellent win. I mean, Washington next season I could see in the 7 to 9 win range, and so you got them coming to town. I do have you beating the Huskies there. But then you got your bye week, and then Stanford and Colorado. Both teams I feel like are winnable, you would say, for Arizona State, but going on the road to both teams, I do think Stanford and Colorado win against Arizona State this season. Stanford actually could be an improved team. Colorado I don't think will be very good, but in the end, I mean, once again, the losses here are certainly a big concern of mine for Arizona State. And looking at November, UCLA, you're going to beat UCLA, so that'll be a huge win. You got them coming to town. You took care of UCLA last season, so I do think, I mean, you got some confidence against them. You do get a huge win against the Bruins there on November 5th, but then you lose your last three. You lose to Washington State, you lose to Oregon State, and you may be a bit confused about this one, but I do have you losing to Arizona on the road. The Wildcats, of course, are, I mean, they were a pretty terrible team last season, but I do think, I mean, Arizona State, I mean, I've been pretty honest to this point about this team and the way things are looking. It doesn't look good. I mean, the coaching situation, Herm Edwards, I mean, he's had some success with Arizona State. He's had some success with this team, but the thing is the amount of players that are transferring out of this program is very concerning. And, I mean, they don't have a whole lot coming in. The recruiting is bad. The transfer portal, of course, you got, I mean, basically one key player coming in from the transfer portal, of course, plus your quarterbacks, and you're losing a whole lot. So it's going to be a younger team next season, and hopefully this team can retain some of the talent from this upcoming season, and maybe they can rebuild and get back at it for the 2023 season or later on. But for now, 4-8 for Arizona State. I feel like the cap for this team, the ceiling is probably 5 wins. Sounds crazy right now, but I just feel like this is going to be a down season for Arizona State with everything going on. I mean, it's going to be a challenge. But let me know your thoughts and comments below on this team, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.